Joining me now is Antony Loewenstein. He's the journalist and author of the Palestine Laboratory, and he's written many other books on the region. Good to see you, Antony. We were listening there, Benjamin Netanyahu, again, rejecting a two-state solution. He also rejected that speech by Charles Schumer saying that there should be new elections in Israel. Joe Biden backed that speech. Nancy Pelosi did the same at the weekend. The question is, does Benjamin Netanyahu even listen to the US anymore?
He doesn't, but to be honest, in many ways, what Netanyahu is saying is correct. That this is not really just about him, and frankly, it hasn't been for years. That the Israeli public in general are generally supporting his policies, if not himself. So there is no real massive support in Israel to end the war. In fact, the support is to continue it, to go into Rafah. There's in fact growing support, a majority of Israelis, according to polls, saying that they support no aid going into Gaza. These are really extreme views. And Netanyahu, in many ways, heads a very extreme government, but the policies that he is pursuing, when he says that, he's correct. The majority of Israelis support it. So in many ways, that's the real problem for the US administration.
And what does that say about how far right Israel has moved politically in recent years? I mean, there's not really a middle and certainly not a left anymore, right?
There's no real left. I mean, obviously there are leftists and there are some protesting on the streets, and some viewers may have seen those, but they're a tiny minority, sadly. Israel has moved so far to the right that there is massive and majority support for things like ethnic cleansing of Palestinians from Gaza. There was a poll like that in November last year. As I said, the poll suggesting that most Israelis do not support sending in aid. There is huge amount of support, in some ways, for a status quo. There is huge support for Israel to continue the occupation in some form. Now, if you ask many Israelis, they will say, we don't like the idea of endless occupation, although many do, but what are you actually going to do to end that? Ending it requires somehow defenestrating or challenging a Israeli far-right settler movement that doesn't represent all Israelis, but in some ways has taken over the state in the last 30 years.
It's interesting when you talk about Israeli attitudes like that when it comes to general Israeli support for the war in Gaza. Something I talked about with Gideon Levy before, and I'm curious your thoughts. What are Israelis seeing in their media versus what the rest of the world sees when it comes to the realities on the ground for Palestinians in Gaza, and for that matter, the West Bank as well? I mean, how different is the global and domestic coverage, and does that impact Israeli sentiments?
Profoundly. I mean, what Israelis are seeing, and of course they could still choose to see other media if they want, but what the Israeli media is giving them, with a few notable exceptions, is wall-to-wall, hardline, patriotic nationalism. We are doing the right thing, we are defeating terror, we are going after terrorists, we are killing Hamas. Palestinian civilians, Palestinian lives not heard of. So the massacres that Israel's committing, the fact that Israel is essentially causing starvation amongst Palestinians does not enter the Israeli mainstream. And that really has been the case for years. And as Gideon Levy and many others have said, no one's putting a gun to the head of the Israeli press to be like that, like they would be, say, in Russia, where really you don't have much choice but to toe a line. This is a choice that the majority of Israeli media is happy to toe that very hard-line anti-Palestinian perspective. And the effect of that for decades of dehumanising Palestinians, which sadly often is reflected in the Jewish diaspora as well, is huge support for an ongoing war in Gaza.
Yeah, I've talked to people in Israel who say they do not see some of the stuff that you can see if you want to go on Instagram or something else in their day-to-day media.
Yeah.
Going back to Chuck Schumer's calls for a new election, something many Israelis have been calling for, of course, given the state of Israeli politics and that shift to the right we were talking about, even if there were suddenly new elections, how different to Netanyahu would any replacement be in terms of Israel's direction right now?
I think many in the world would like to believe that Netanyahu falling would change things, but the likely replacements for him, Benny Gantz, Yair Lapid, even Naftali Bennett, on the key issues, Gaza, the occupation, settlements, there is virtually no difference. You would not maybe have, with a different prime minister, maybe a less far-right coalition, that's true. But on the key issues, there is little difference, which is why the obsession with Netanyahu really is a distraction. But yes, he's the Prime Minister, that responsibility lies with him, of course, but ultimately the likely alternatives, this is based on public opinion polling, is very, very similar. There is a real mainstream consensus within Israel to dehumanise Palestinians. So regardless who heads the government, that policy will sadly continue.
As we've been discussing, Netanyahu seems determined to defy any international pressure, basically just ignoring it, and it should surprise no one because he's been doing that for years. But what would the impact of the promised Rafah operation, especially we don't know what the plan is to protect civilians, if there is a full-on operation in Rafah? Joe Biden said that's a red line. Would Netanyahu even respond to that sort of threat?
I mean, Joe Biden has said it's a red line, but also said that he wouldn't cut off funding. I mean, let's be clear. America is still sending weapons. America still wants to sell more weapons. This is what matters. The rhetoric, in my view, does not matter. For months, we've heard comments from Antony Blinken and Lloyd Austin and Joe Biden that we are concerned about Palestinian civilians. There was a report on the weekend that made it very clear in Politico that the US is willing to accept a Rafah incursion, invasion, call it whatever you want, as long as there's some protections for civilians. After 5+ months, we have seen 30 to 40,000 Palestinians killed, the majority of whom are civilians. America knows, the EU that's backing this, they know what that Rafah operation will mean. And barring some huge change of heart or withdrawal of aid or cutting off weapons to Israel, Rafah will happen, I fear, and with the resulting bloodbath that will occur. That's the sad reality. Words no longer matter, only actions.
Antony Loewenstein, always fascinating to get your analysis. Good to see you. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Michael.